The Vexari cruiser Eternal Wing positioned itself alongside the dying Wandering Star, the same ship that had abandoned New Haven 3 days ago. Next to it came the Thornian merchant fleet. Behind them, the Union military patrol vessel Righteous Path. All the ships that had run away were back. Captain Deho's first emotion was rage. Pure, burning rage. These cowards had left 3,000 people to die. Now they showed up at the last moment, ready to play hero, ready to take credit for a rescue they'd never attempted. His second emotion was pragmatic acceptance. The Wandering Star had maybe 5 minutes before life support failed completely. He had 1,200 people who needed to be evacuated immediately. His feelings didn't matter. Getting these people to safety was all that mattered. "All ships, this is Captain Deho of the Wandering Star," he transmitted, keeping his voice level. "We have 1,200 survivors aboard. Our ship is dead in space, requesting immediate evacuation assistance." The Vexari captain, Krell's superior officer, responded immediately. "Wandering Star, this is Commander Vex of the Eternal Wing. We're moving into position for emergency docking. Stand by, stand by." As if they had any other choice. The Eternal Wing was enormous compared to the Wandering Star. It could have evacuated the entire colony 3 days ago with room to spare. Now it extended docking tunnels to the cargo ship's airlocks. Sora was near one of the airlocks when it opened. A Vexari soldier stood on the other side, ready to help people cross. He looked at her with what might have been sympathy or might have been guilt. "Hard to read alien expressions sometimes this way," he said. "You're safe now." Sora wanted to scream at him. "Where were you 3 days ago? Where were you when we watched your ship leave? Where were you when we accepted we were going to die?" But she didn't say anything. She just helped the children cross the docking tunnel. Getting them to safety was more important than her anger. Minho was in the main cargo bay when the Thornian merchant started loading people. The Thornians moved efficiently, professionally. They'd done this kind of thing before. Loading cargo, loading people. Same procedure, really. One of the Thornian crew members, a reptilian being with scales that changed color, actually apologized. "We should have come sooner. Our captain made a business decision. It was wrong." "Yeah," Minho said. "It was." He didn't elaborate. What else was there to say? The Thornian knew what they'd done. Apologizing now didn't change anything. But at least they were here. That was something. The Union military vessel Righteous Path took the last group of survivors. Captain Deho insisted his crew evacuate with them. Taemin refused to leave until he'd initiated emergency shutdown on all remaining systems. Couldn't leave a dead ship with active reactors drifting through space. It was a safety hazard. Hana was the last person off the bridge. She stood in the pilot's seat one final time, her hands on controls that no longer controlled anything. The Wandering Star had been her home for 5 years. She'd flown it through nebulas and asteroid fields and impossible situations. The ship had never let her down. Now it was over. The ship was dead. They'd killed it, saving people. She thought that was probably the best death a ship could have. "Thank you," she whispered to the empty bridge. Then she followed her crew to the evacuation tunnel. Deho was the absolute last person off. Captain's tradition. You leave your ship last, even when your ship is a floating wreck that would probably explode in the next hour. Especially then. He took one final look around. The cargo bay where they'd packed 800 people on the first run. The corridor where children had slept during the trip to the station. The engine room where Taemin had worked miracles with broken parts and desperation. The Wandering Star had been a cargo vessel. Nothing special. A small ship that moved boxes from one place to another for modest pay. Now it was a monument. Proof that sometimes one small ship could change everything. He crossed the docking tunnel onto the Righteous Path. Behind him, the tunnel disconnected. The Wandering Star drifted away, dark and dead, surrounded by asteroids. The Union patrol ship's captain was waiting for him. A human, actually, which somehow made it worse. Her name tag read Captain Yuna. "We're preparing an official statement," Yuna said. "Union forces coordinated successful evacuation of New Haven Colony. 3,000 survivors rescued through combined fleet action. We'll need you to verify the details." Deho stared at her. "You're going to lie about what happened?" "It's not lying. It's presenting the facts in the most constructive way. Multiple ships participated in the rescue." "That's true. After I did all the work while you ran away." Yuna's expression hardened. "I had orders. My ship couldn't risk engagement during an asteroid event of that magnitude. 1,200 people were going to die, and now they're alive. Does it matter who gets credit? Yes, Deho said quietly. It matters, because the next time people need help they'll call the Union, and the Union will run the math and decide they're not worth saving. Again. He walked away before she could respond. He found his crew in one of the refugee areas. Taemin was sitting on the floor back against a wall, eyes closed. Hana was checking on the refugees, making sure everyone had water and food. They looked exhausted. They looked like they'd aged 10 years in 3 days. They looked like heroes, even if they'd never used that word themselves. Minho found them an hour later. He'd been looking for them specifically. He had something he needed to say. Captain Deho? He said. Deho looked up. He recognized the kid, one of the ones who'd stayed behind to help during the evacuations. Brave kid. Stupid brave, the kind that got you killed or made you a legend. Sometimes both, yeah? I wanted to thank you. All of you, Minho's voice caught. We watched 5 ships leave us. 5 chances at life, and they all flew away. We thought the galaxy had decided we didn't matter. Then you came. I don't know why. I don't understand why you'd risk everything for strangers. But you did. You saved all of us. We couldn't just leave you. Deho said. Everyone else did. That was the truth. Simple. Undeniable. Everyone else had done exactly that. Sora appeared next to Minho. She had her datapad, and her expression was determined in a way that suggested she was about to do something that couldn't be undone. I've been recording testimony, she said, from survivors, about what happened. Which ships came when they were called. Which ships ran away. The exact timeline of everything. Why? Hana asked. Because they're going to lie, Sora said, gesturing at the Union ship around them. They're going to say this was a coordinated rescue. That everyone helped. I've already heard them practicing their statements. They're going to take credit for what you did. Let them, Deho said tiredly. We know the truth. That's enough. No, it's not, Minho said. Because next time someone else will be dying. And they'll call for help. And the same ships will run the same math and make the same choice. Unless people know what really happened here. Sora held up her datapad. I have 3,000 witness statements. Every single survivor. They all want to tell the truth. They want the galaxy to know who came and who didn't. Do we have your permission to share this? Deho looked at his crew. Taemin shrugged. Hana nodded slowly. They'd done the right thing. Maybe it was time people knew about it. Do what you think is right, he told Sora. She smiled. It was a fierce expression. I will. The story spread fast. Faster than the Union could contain it. 3,000 survivors all telling the same story to anyone who would listen. Social media. News networks. Personal messages to friends and family across the galaxy. The truth spread like fire. Through dry grass, a human cargo ship saved 3,000 people while the Galactic Union fleet fled. One small vessel made 3 trips through an asteroid. Storm that military vessels deemed too dangerous. 5 humans destroyed their ship and nearly died because they decided strangers were worth saving. The Union tried to control the narrative. They released their official statement about coordinated rescue efforts. But 3,000 voices drowned them out. The survivors didn't just tell the truth. They showed it. Video footage from the colony. Timestamps of when ships arrived and left. Recordings of the transmissions. The cold bureaucratic voices explaining why helping wasn't cost-effective. And in the middle of it all, the wandering star. One small ship doing the impossible because the possible meant letting people die. The station where the first refugees had been taken became the center of the story. Dr. Jiwon had set up her medical bay there. She'd treated hundreds of people. She'd heard all their stories. She'd seen their faces when they talked about being abandoned. Now reporters were showing up. Everyone wanted to talk to the survivors. Everyone wanted to know about the humans who'd risked everything. Jiwon gave interview after interview. She was good at it. She could explain complex things simply. She could make people understand the stakes, the fear, the moment when hope died and then impossibly returned. They didn't have to come, she told one reporter. Their ship was small. Their crew was tiny. They gained nothing from helping. They almost died 3 times, but they came anyway. And they kept coming back until everyone was safe. Why do you think they did it? The reporter asked. Because they're human, Jiwon said simply. And humans have this strange quality. They do irrational things. They make choices that don't make economic sense. Minho sat in the central bunker with 1,200 people who'd been left behind. They'd watched the wandering star disappear into the asteroid storm twice now. Each time they'd wondered if it would come back. Each time somehow it had. But now hours had passed with no sign of the ship. The bunker's walls shook with constant impacts. Dust fell from the ceiling. The lights flickered. Children asked when the humans were coming back. Adults had no answers to give. Sora checked her datapad for the 100th time. The shields were completely gone now. Every building on the surface was destroyed or damaged. The asteroid storm was at its absolute peak. Even if the wandering star could fly again, getting through this would be suicide. "They're not coming back," someone said in the darkness. They saved who they could. "We're the ones who drew the short straw." "They promised," Minho said. "They said they'd get everyone out." People promise lots of things. A massive impact shook the bunker. Somewhere above them, something huge had hit the surface. The lights went out completely. Emergency lighting kicked in, casting everything in red. Someone screamed. A child started crying. Minho wanted to tell them it would be okay, but he wasn't sure anymore. Maybe the person was right. Maybe the wandering star had done all it could. 2/3 of the colony saved was better than nothing. Why would they risk their lives again for the people who'd been left behind? On the station, Taman had been working for 5 straight hours. His hands were burned. His eyes were red from chemical fumes. He'd taken the melted starboard engine apart piece by piece, salvaging anything that might still work. The problem was that almost nothing still worked. The reactor core was slag. The fuel injectors were warped. The thrust vectoring system was completely destroyed. He had parts from a dead engine and somehow needed to make it live again. He'd called in every favor he had. Station mechanics who owed him from past jobs came to help. They brought parts stripped from derelict ships. They brought tools and expertise and the kind of desperate creativity that only came from knowing people would die if you failed. Together, they built something that barely qualified as an engine. It was a patchwork of 3 different manufacturers' parts, held together with welds and hope. It would probably explode after an hour of use, but it would run. That was enough. Hana had used her rest time to study the asteroid field. The storm was worse now than when they'd made the second trip. The computer said getting through was impossible. The math said any ship attempting it would be destroyed within minutes. She erased the computer's projections and started plotting manually. There was always a path. Always a way through if you were willing to take risks that no sane person would consider. She found it. A route that required 52 separate course corrections in the space of 8 minutes. Each one would need to be timed perfectly. One mistake and they'd slam into a rock at high speed. She input the course into the navigation computer. The computer told her the plan was suicide. She ignored it. Captain Deho stood in the docking bay looking at his ship. The wandering star looked like it had been through a war. Because it had. A war against physics, against probability, against the cold math that said some people weren't worth saving. Dr. Jiwan approached him. She'd been working non-stop in her makeshift medical bay. Her clothes were stained with blood from a dozen different species. Her face was lined with exhaustion. "You're going back," she said. It wasn't a question. "Yes. The ship won't survive another trip." "I know. You won't survive another trip." "Maybe not." She looked at him for a long moment. "I've been treating the people you rescued. Do you know what they all say? They say they watched 5 ships abandon them. 5 chances at life and everyone left them to die. Then you came. One small ship that had no reason to help, that gained nothing from helping. You came anyway. Someone had to." "No," G1 said quietly. "No one had to. That's the point. The galaxy decided those people weren't worth saving. You decided they were. That matters. That changes something important. What does it change? I don't know yet. But it's important." She squeezed his shoulder. "Bring the rest of them home." Deho gathered his crew in the cargo bay. Hana, Taman, and 2 other crew members who'd volunteered for this suicide mission. They all looked exhausted, burned, beaten. But they were here. "This is the last trip," he said. 1,200 people are still down there. The asteroid storm is at maximum intensity. Our ship is held together with patches and prayers. We'll probably die attempting this." He paused. "If anyone wants to stay here, I understand." You've already done more than anyone could ask. You've saved lives. You're heroes. No one would blame you for stopping now. No one moved. Are you all insane? Tejo asked, but he was smiling slightly. Probably, Hana said. But we started this. We finish it. They boarded the Wandering Star. The ship groaned when they powered up the systems. The rebuilt engine coughed and sputtered before catching. It sounded wrong, felt wrong, but it was running. They undocked from the station. Behind them, 1,800 refugees watched through observation windows. Some prayed. Some cried. They all understood what the crew was doing. Flying into certain death to save strangers. It didn't make sense. It was beautiful and terrible and completely irrational. It was the most human thing they'd ever seen. The asteroid field had gotten worse. Much worse. It was so dense now that the view screen showed almost nothing but rocks. Finding a path through seemed impossible. Hana's hands moved across the controls, starting approach run. Everyone hold on to something. The ship dove into the storm. What followed was 8 minutes of controlled chaos. Hana called out corrections in rapid fire. Port thrusters 3 seconds. Roll 90 degrees, main engine full burn. Kill thrust. Starboard thrusters now. The ship twisted and turned like a dancer in a minefield. Asteroids passed by close enough to touch. The rebuilt engine screamed in protest at every maneuver. Taemin watched his console light up with warnings and just kept feeding power to the systems that hadn't exploded yet. A rock the size of a building appeared directly ahead. Too close, too fast. No time to dodge. Hana did the only thing she could. She fired every thruster they had simultaneously, spinning the ship in a corkscrew while maintaining forward velocity. The asteroid passed through the center of their spin, missing them by meters on all sides. I can't believe that worked, someone shouted. Don't celebrate yet, Hana said through gritted teeth. We're only halfway through. Another asteroid, this one tumbling end over end, unpredictable. Hana watched it, calculated its rotation, and threaded the ship through a gap that existed for exactly 2 seconds. They made it through with centimeters to spare. But their luck was running out. The rebuilt engine was overheating. The hull was taking impacts from smaller debris. The shields had never come back online. They were flying a ship that was disintegrating around them through the worst asteroid storm in recorded history. Then Hana saw it. The asteroid that would kill them. It was massive, easily a kilometer across, and it was directly in their path. No time to go around it. Not enough thrust to go over it. They were going to hit it head on. Brace for impact, Tejo called out. Hana had one insane idea. The asteroid had a canyon running across its surface. Deep, narrow, barely wide enough for their ship. If she could line up the approach perfectly, if she could match the asteroid's rotation exactly, if nothing went wrong, they could fly through it instead of hitting it. She had 3 seconds to make it work. She killed the main engine and fired only the maneuvering thrusters. Precise little bursts that twisted the ship into alignment. The asteroid's surface rushed toward them. She could see rocks and ice crystals on its surface in perfect detail. The canyon opened in front of them. Hana fired the engine and dove in. The walls of the canyon passed by on both sides, close enough to scratch the hull. The Wandering Star screamed through the tunnel of rock, fragments and debris pelting them constantly. The canyon twisted. Hana twisted with it. The canyon narrowed. Hana rotated the ship to fit. Then they were through. Out the other side, back into open space. Behind them, the massive asteroid tumbled away. That was impossible, Taemin whispered. Everything about this is impossible, Hana replied. That's our specialty now. New Haven appeared below them, or what was left of it. Most of the colony was gone. Just craters and rubble and fire. The only intact structure was the central bunker, a reinforced dome that still stood despite everything the universe had thrown at it. The landing zone was destroyed. Hana set the ship down on bare rock next to the bunker entrance. The landing was hard. One of the landing struts collapsed. The ship tilted at an angle but stayed upright. Everyone out, Tejo called. We don't have much time. The bunker doors opened. 1,200 people emerged into a nightmare landscape. Asteroids still fell around them. The ground shook. The sky was dark with rocks and fire, but the Wandering Star was there. Impossible, broken, listing to one side, but there. They came back. They actually came back. People ran for the ship, not in panic this time, in joy, in desperate relief, in amazement that anyone would risk everything for them. Minho helped load the children first. A little girl looked up at him with wide eyes. Are the humans going to save us? They already did, Minho said. Now they're just taking us home. Sora was one of the last to board. The station commander was a Vexari named Krell. He'd been having a quiet day until 800 refugees appeared at his docking bay, all talking at once, all demanding shelter. His station was designed for a crew of 50 and maybe 20 visitors. Now he had hundreds of frightened colonists filling every corridor. This is highly irregular, Krell said to Captain Deho. We don't have resources for this many people. Deho was exhausted. He'd been awake for 30 hours. His ship was dying. There were still 2,200 people on New Haven waiting for him to come back. He didn't have time for bureaucracy. Your cruiser was one of the ships that abandoned them, he said quietly. The Eternal Wing. These people told me all about it. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to give them food, water, and shelter, and you're going to do it with a smile. Or what? Or I broadcast everything on every Union channel. How your military ran away while civilians died. How a single cargo ship did what your entire fleet wouldn't. Want to see how that plays in the media? Krell's skin changed color, a sign of anger in his species. But he backed down. We'll accommodate them. Temporarily. Good enough. Deho left Dr. Jiwan at the station. She'd found several injured people who needed immediate care. She set up a makeshift medical center in an empty storage bay and got to work. Her training had prepared her for many things, but not for this. Not for treating people who'd been abandoned by their own government. The Wandering Star undocked and headed back toward New Haven. Taemin was in engineering, watching systems fail in real time. The port engine was running at 40% efficiency. The hull breaches were getting bigger. The shield generator was overheating every 10 minutes. We're not going to make 4 trips, he told Deho over the comm. This ship is coming apart. How many more can we make? 2, maybe 3 if we're lucky, and lucky hasn't been a thing lately. Then we make them count. On New Haven, the asteroid storm was reaching its peak. The sky was dark with rocks. Impacts thundered constantly. The ground shook so hard that standing was difficult. The remaining shields were at 15% and dropping fast. Minho helped move people into the central bunker. It was the most reinforced structure in the colony, built into the bedrock itself. It could survive almost anything. The problem was it could only hold 500 people comfortably. They were squeezing in 1,500 with more coming every minute. Children cried. Adults shouted. Someone was praying loudly in a language Minho didn't recognize. The air was thick with fear and sweat and the smell of too many people in too small a space. Sora was still outside, refusing to take shelter. She'd moved to the eastern shields, trying to keep them operational. If those failed, the landing zone would be exposed. The Wandering Star wouldn't be able to land safely. Everyone still waiting would be trapped. An asteroid hit the ground 50 meters away. The shockwave knocked Sora off her feet. She tasted blood, realized she'd bitten her tongue. Her ears rang. But she got back up and kept working. The western section of the colony was gone now. Just rubble and fire. The northern section was starting to collapse. 100-year-old buildings that had weathered countless storms were crumbling like sandcastles. New Haven was dying around them. Then someone spotted it. A light in the sky, growing brighter. The Wandering Star, coming back through the asteroid field. Hana was flying on instinct now. The navigation computer was useless in this chaos. She watched the asteroids, predicted their trajectories, and moved the ship through gaps that closed seconds after they passed. It was like trying to run through rain without getting wet, except the raindrops were the size of buildings and moved at thousands of kilometers per hour. A rock the size of a small ship appeared directly ahead. Too big to dodge, too close to avoid. Hana did the only thing she could. She fired the maneuvering thrusters and rolled the Wandering Star 90 degrees. The asteroid passed beneath them, close enough that its gravity tugged at the ship. One of the external cargo pods scraped against the rock's surface. Metal screamed. Then they were past, still intact, still flying. That was too close, Hana whispered. They're all too close, Deho replied. Just keep us alive for 10 more minutes. The ship dropped through the atmosphere and landed hard. The landing gear groaned but held. The boarding ramp slammed down and people rushed forward. This time there was no orderly line. This was desperation. 1,000 people trying to board a ship that could hold 200. Deho had to shout to be heard over the chaos. We're making multiple trips. Everyone will get out. But you have to stay calm. It didn't help much. Parents fought to get their children aboard. The elderly were pushed aside in the rush. Minho and several other colonists formed a human chain, trying to maintain some order. Sora used her datapad to count people, making sure they didn't overload the ship beyond its ability to fly. They got 1,000 people aboard, packed into every available space. Some were standing in the airlock, some were crammed into storage closets. The external cargo pods were filled past capacity, people sitting on each other's laps, barely enough room to breathe. Taemin's voice came through the comm, tight with stress. "Captain, we're 30% over maximum takeoff weight. Can we fly?" "I don't know. The engines might just explode when we try." "Let's find out." The Wandering Star's engines fired. The ship shuddered. Metal groaned. For a terrible moment, nothing happened. They just sat there, engines screaming, going nowhere. Then slowly, painfully, they began to lift. The ship rose at half its normal speed, fighting gravity and overloading and structural damage all at once. Asteroids fell around them. One hit the ground where they'd been parked 5 seconds earlier, cratering the landing zone. Hana aimed for the thinnest part of the asteroid field and pushed the throttle as far as it would go. The ship responded sluggishly, like it was moving through honey. Every control input took twice as long as normal. An asteroid appeared on their left. Hana tried to dodge right. The ship moved too slowly. They were going to hit. Taemin saw it coming from engineering. He did something crazy. He shut down the port engine completely and fired the starboard engine at 150%. The asymmetric thrust spun the ship sideways. The asteroid passed through the space where they'd been. They missed it by meters, but the maneuver had consequences. The starboard engine, already pushed beyond its limits, started to fail. Temperature spiked into the red zone. Warning klaxons screamed, "Starboard engine is dying." Taemin shouted, "We need to shut it down or it'll take the whole ship with it." "How far to the station?" Taeho asked. 12 minutes at current speed," Hana said. "How long can the engine last?" "Maybe 5 minutes," Taemin said. The math didn't work. It never seemed to work on this mission. But Taeho had stopped caring about the math. Math said they shouldn't have entered the nebula. Math said they shouldn't have survived the first trip through the asteroids. Math said they shouldn't have been able to take off with 1,000 people aboard. Math could go to hell. "Keep it running," he ordered. "We'll make it." Taemin didn't argue. He just started rerouting every bit of cooling he had left into that engine. He shut down life support in half the ship. He dumped their entire water reserves into the coolant system. He pulled power from the artificial gravity, from the lights, from everything that wasn't absolutely critical. The engine kept running. People in the cargo bay were floating now that the gravity was off. Parents held on to children. Everyone held on to everyone else. They could feel the ship shaking. They could hear the engine screaming. They knew something was very wrong. But they also knew that 5 humans they'd never met were killing themselves to save them. That meant something. That meant everything. 6 minutes to the station. The engine temperature was at 190%. Metal was melting inside the reactor core. 5 minutes. Warning lights covered Taemin's console. He ignored them all. 4 minutes. Something exploded in the engine room. Taemin grabbed a fire extinguisher and put it out, then went back to his console. 3 minutes. The ship was vibrating so hard that Hana's teeth were rattling. She could barely see the controls. 2 minutes. The asteroid field was thinning. They were almost through. 1 minute. The station appeared on the view screen. 30 seconds. The starboard engine was glowing red hot. Taemin could see it through the engine room window. It looked like a dying star. 10 seconds. Almost there. 5 seconds. The engine died. Just stopped completely all at once. The sudden loss of thrust sent the ship spinning. Hana fought the controls, using the last of their maneuvering fuel to stabilize. They coasted toward the station on momentum alone. No power, no thrust. Just a ship full of refugees drifting through space, praying they had enough velocity to reach the docking bay. They did. Barely. The ship drifted into the bay and clanged against the docking clamps. Not a graceful landing. More like a controlled crash. But they were there. They were alive. Taeho stood at the airlock as the refugees filed off. Many of them stopped to thank him. Some hugged him. Some just touched his arm as they passed, as if confirming he was real. One old woman, probably 80 years old, looked up at him with tears in her eyes. "Why?" she asked. "Why did you come for us when everyone else left?" Taeho didn't have a good answer. There wasn't a reason that made... The Wandering Star was screaming. Not literally. but Taman could hear it in the engine vibrations. The metal groaned under stress it was never designed to handle. Warning lights covered his engineering console like angry red stars. Engine temperature at 130%, he reported to the bridge. We're cooking the reactor core. Can we make it? Deho asked. Taman looked at his readings. By every manual, every safety regulation, every piece of common sense, the answer was no. The engines should fail in the next 6 hours. They needed to run for 50 more. Yes, sir, Taman lied. Then he got to work making that lie into truth. He rerouted coolant from the cargo bay temperature control. He shut down the artificial gravity in the empty sections. He pulled power from anywhere that wasn't absolutely critical and fed it into the engine cooling systems. The ship was falling apart around him, but it was falling apart slowly. That would have to be enough. On the bridge, Hana studied the navigation charts. The direct route to New Haven went through empty space. Safe, boring, and too slow. They'd arrived 3 hours after the main asteroid impact. 3 hours too late. But there was another way. Captain, she said, there's a nebula between us and New Haven. The Serpent's Breath. Deho knew that nebula. Every pilot in the sector knew it. The gases inside played hell with navigation systems. Ships that entered it sometimes came out dozens of light years off course. Sometimes they didn't come out at all. If we go through instead of around, Hana continued, we cut 20 hours off our travel time. If we don't get lost and die in there, Deho said. If we don't get lost and die in there, Hana agreed. They looked at each other. Deho saw the determination in his pilot's eyes. She'd already made her choice. She was just waiting for him to catch up. Take us through, he ordered. The wandering star dove into the nebula like a swimmer into murky water. Purple and green gases swirled past the viewports. The navigation computer started throwing error messages immediately. Outside reference points vanished. They were flying blind through a cosmic storm, trusting Hana's instincts and quick reflexes to keep them from slamming into a dust cloud at faster-than-light speeds. An alert blared. Hana jerked the controls left. Something massive passed by on their starboard side, close enough to scrape the shields. A dead ship tumbling through the nebula, one more victim of the Serpent's Breath. This is insane, one of the crew whispered. Yep, Hana said, her hands steady on the controls. But we're still alive. She flew like she was born in that nebula. Every twist and turn, every sudden maneuver, brought them deeper into the chaos and closer to New Haven. The ship shook and groaned. The engines howled, but they kept moving forward. On New Haven, the first small asteroids began hitting the outer shields. They sounded like rain on a tin roof. Tap, tap, tap. Harmless for now. But everyone knew what was coming behind them. Minho was in the underground bunker with 40 children. They'd been down there for 6 hours. The kids were scared, crying, asking for parents who were working elsewhere in the colony. He tried to keep them calm with stories and games, but it was hard to pretend everything was fine when the walls shook with each impact. Sora was topside at the shield generators. The western generator was overheating. She'd been trying to fix it for 3 hours. Her hands burned from touching hot metal, her eyes stinging from smoke. If the generator failed, that entire section of the colony would be exposed to the asteroid storm. Behind her, the sky was falling, literally. Streaks of fire crossed overhead as rocks burned through the atmosphere. Most were small, pebbles and fragments that disintegrated before reaching the ground. But they were getting bigger. Every hour brought larger impacts. Dr. Jiwan had converted the medical center into a triage station. She'd already treated 15 people injured by falling debris. A worker who'd been hit by a fragment that punched through a roof. A child who'd fallen during a tremor. A woman having a panic attack so severe her heart was racing dangerously fast. The doctor worked mechanically, efficiently. She couldn't afford to think about how much worse it would get. She just focused on the next patient, the next injury, the next life she might be able to save. The colony administrator was in his office, staring at a list of names. 3,000 colonists, space in the bunkers for 1,500. He'd been trying to create a fair selection system for 12 hours. Age-based? Random lottery? Essential personnel first? Every option felt like playing God. Every choice meant condemning half the colony to death. He didn't know that he wouldn't have to make that choice. Help was coming. Impossible, irrational, beautiful help was racing toward them through a nightmare nebula. The wandering star burst out of the Serpent's Breath like a cork from a bottle. Alarms were screaming. The hull had microfractures along the entire port side. 2 of the 3 main engines were running at critical temperature. The navigation computer was still recalibrating, confused about where they were, but they'd made it. And they'd saved 20 hours. New Haven, this is the cargo vessel Wandering Star. Deho transmitted. We received your distress call. We're coming to get you out. In the colony command center, 3 people were monitoring the communication station. They'd heard nothing but silence and rejection for 2 days. When the human's voice came through the speakers, they thought it was a mistake. A recording. A cruel joke. Unknown vessel, please repeat. The communications officer said, his voice shaking. This is Captain Deho of the Wandering Star. We're human. We're here to help. What's your status? The communications officer started crying. He couldn't help it. Someone had come back. Someone had actually come back. Word spread through the colony like electricity. A ship was coming. A human ship. They weren't abandoned anymore. They had a chance. Minho heard the news from someone running through the bunker corridors, shouting it to everyone they passed. He looked at the children around him, saw hope lighting up their faces, and felt something crack in his chest. Relief, maybe. Or just the release of 2 days of suffocating fear. Sora heard it through her communicator while elbow-deep in the shield generator. She sat back, closed her eyes, and let herself believe it for just a moment. They might live. They might actually live. Then she went back to work. The ship would need time to arrive. The shields had to hold until then. The Wandering Star approached New Haven's orbit and got its first look at the asteroid storm. Hana's breath caught in her throat. The scanner screen was solid red with contacts. Thousands of rocks, ranging from the size of a car to the size of a mountain. They filled the space around New Haven like a swarm of angry bees. We'll never get through that, she said. We don't have a choice, Deho replied. Taemin's voice came through from engineering. Captain, we have a problem. Our ship maxes out at 200 people. I'm reading 3,000 colonists down there. Deho had been thinking about this since they'd intercepted the distress call. He'd known the math didn't work. One small cargo ship couldn't evacuate an entire colony. But he'd come anyway because leaving people to die wasn't an option his brain could process. The colony will have cargo pods, he said. Standard shipping containers. We can attach them to our hull with magnetic clamps. Use them as auxiliary passenger space. Captain, those pods aren't designed for passenger transport, Taemin said. They're not pressurized for extended use. No proper life support. How long can people survive in them? Maybe an hour. 2 if we pump air in from our reserves. Then we make fast trips, Deho said. Multiple runs. We load up, punch through the asteroids, drop people at the nearest station, and come back for more. Hana did the math in her head. 3,000 people. 200 at a time in the ship. Maybe another 600 in external pods. That was 800 per trip. They'd need to make 4 runs through an asteroid storm that was getting worse by the hour. 4 trips in a ship that was already falling apart. Let's start planning the approach, she said. Below them, the colony shields flickered and died on the western side. The generator Sora had been fighting to save finally gave up. Rocks began to rain down on that section. Buildings crumbled. People ran for the central bunkers, dodging falling debris, helping those who fell. Minho emerged from the underground to help with the evacuation. He saw the Wandering Star on the horizon, a small bright star against the dark sky. It looked impossibly tiny. How could something so small save everyone? But it was trying. That was more than anyone else had done. The ship descended through the asteroid field. Rocks pinged off its shields. Hana dodged and weaved, her hands moving faster than thought. A boulder the size of a house tumbled past, close enough to see the ice crystals on its surface. She rolled the ship, slipped past it, and kept descending. They touched down in the colony's landing zone. The boarding ramp dropped. Deho stood at the top looking out at 3,000 desperate faces. Children and elderly first, he called out. We're coming back for everyone. I promise you that. We're not leaving until every single person is off this rock. The evacuation began. Taemin and 2 crew members started attaching cargo pods to the hull. Sora helped organize the lines, making sure the most vulnerable boarded first. Minho carried a small child who'd been separated from her parents, promising to help find them later. Dr. G1 made the hardest choice of her career. The alarm started at dawn on New Haven Colony. Red lights flashed across every building, every corridor, every home. Minho was helping stack supply crates in the warehouse when the first siren went off. He dropped the box he was carrying and ran outside with everyone else. The sky looked wrong. Dark shapes moved between the stars, growing larger with each passing minute. Asteroids, hundreds of them, maybe thousands. The colony's detection system had spotted them too late. They were coming fast, and they were coming straight at New Haven. Sora found Minho near the central plaza. Her face was pale, her hands shaking as she held her data pad. "The computer says we have 72 hours, she said. Maybe less. 72 hours until 3,000 people died on a forgotten mining colony at the edge of known space. The colony administrator sent out distress calls immediately. Every frequency, every channel, every emergency protocol in the book. New Haven transmitted its position, its population, its desperate need for evacuation ships. The signal went out, into the black, carrying the hopes of everyone trapped on the dying world. Ships heard them. The scanners picked up 5 vessels within range. 5 ships that could reach them in time. 5 chances at survival. The first to arrive was the Vexari cruiser Eternal Wing. It was massive, gleaming silver against the stars, large enough to carry every person on New Haven 3 times over. The colonists cheered when it dropped out of hyperspace. They gathered at the communications center, waiting for the Vexari captain to coordinate evacuation. Instead, a cold voice came through the speakers. "New Haven Colony, this is Eternal Wing. We have reviewed your situation. Our analysis indicates a 73% chance of damage to our vessel if we attempt evacuation during the asteroid event. Union Regulation 472 prohibits unnecessary risk to military assets. We are departing. Good luck." The transmission ended. The great silver ship turned away, its engines flaring bright blue. Then it vanished into hyperspace, leaving the colonists staring at empty space. Minho felt something cold settle in his stomach. They had just been abandoned, left to die because helping them was too risky, too inconvenient, too expensive. But there were still 4 more ships coming. 4 more chances. The Thornian merchant fleet arrived next. 6 cargo haulers, each one bigger than the colony's main habitat dome. Surely they would help. Surely merchant ships that traveled these routes would understand the code of space, the unwritten law that you help those in distress. The Thornian captain's response was brief. "Our cargo is worth 40 million credits. We cannot risk it for an uninsured colony. Hire a proper rescue service next time." They left even faster than the Vexari had. A Quellan diplomatic ship passed through the system 4 hours later. It didn't even respond to hails. It just kept going, as if New Haven's distress signal was nothing more than background noise. The Union military patrol vessel Righteous Path gave them hope again. It was a Union ship after all. The colony paid taxes to the Union. They were Union citizens. Surely the military would protect its own people. The patrol captain at least had the decency to sound regretful. "New Haven, we've run the numbers. The asteroid density is too high. We could save maybe 200 people before we'd have to retreat. Command says it's not worth losing a military vessel. They're sending thoughts and prayers." Righteous Path out. Thoughts and prayers. That's what 3,000 lives were worth to the Galactic Union. The last ship on the scanner was smaller, slower. It wouldn't arrive for another 60 hours. By then, the asteroids would be hitting the outer edges of the system. No one expected that ship to even try. Dr. Jiwan stood in the medical center looking at her supplies. Bandages and medicine for maybe 50 serious injuries. She had 3,000 people to care for when the rocks started falling. She began sorting the supplies into groups. Critical injuries here, moderate injuries there. A separate pile for people who wouldn't make it no matter what she did. Sora worked at the shield generators, trying to boost their output by even 1%. It wouldn't matter. The shields could handle small debris, but the big asteroids would smash through them like they weren't even there. Still, she worked. What else could she do? Minho volunteered to help with the children. The colony's youngest residents didn't fully understand what was happening. They knew something was wrong, but they still played and laughed and asked when their parents would come get them. Minho helped them pack small bags with their favorite toys. He didn't tell them they probably wouldn't need those toys in a few days. The colony's observation deck was always crowded now. People gathered there to watch the asteroids grow larger in the sky. They came to see if any new ships appeared on the scanners. Mostly they came because being alone felt worse than being together. Minho and Sora stood at the observation window on the second night. The asteroids were visible now without telescopes. Dark shapes that blocked out the stars. The colony's lights reflected off their surfaces, making them look like giant hands reaching out to crush New Haven. "Do you think anyone else will come?" Sora asked quietly. Minho wanted to say yes. He wanted to believe that someone in the galaxy cared whether they lived or died, but 5 ships had already shown him the truth. They were on their own. "No," he said. "I don't think so." Sora nodded. She'd known the answer already. "My father is trying to set up a lottery system for the bunkers. They can't hold everyone." "I know. He wants to put all the children in first, then adults by random selection. That's fair, I guess." "Is it?" Sora turned to look at him. "Is any of this fair?" Minho had no answer for that. In deep space, far beyond New Haven's detection range, a small cargo ship intercepted the distress signal. It was old, patched together from parts of 3 different manufacturers. Its crew consisted of 5 humans who'd been hauling medical supplies to a frontier station. Captain Deho listened to the emergency broadcast 3 times. He pulled up the navigation charts and did the math. They could reach New Haven in 62 hours if they pushed the engines past their safety limits. They'd arrive right as the asteroid storm was beginning. "It's going to be bad," Hana said from the pilot's seat. She was looking at the same numbers. "Even if we get there, we probably can't get everyone out." Taman spoke up from engineering. "Our ship holds 200 people maximum. The distress call says there's 3,000 colonists." They all knew what that meant. They could save less than 10%. And trying to save even that many would probably destroy their ship and kill them all. Deho looked at his crew. They were all watching him, waiting for his decision. He could ignore the distress call. No one would blame them. 5 other ships had already done exactly that. They could continue to the frontier station, deliver their cargo, collect their payment, and live. Or they could try to save strangers and probably die in the attempt. "Let's vote," Deho said. "All in favor of attempting rescue?" Every hand went up. No hesitation, not even a moment's pause. Hana set a course for New Haven. Deho ordered. "Taemin, give me everything the engines have. We're going to need every minute." The wandering star turned toward the dying colony and jumped to hyperspace. One small human ship against the void, racing toward people they'd never met, to attempt a rescue that would probably fail. But they were going anyway. On New Haven, Minho stood at the observation window and watched the asteroids fall closer. He didn't know that help was coming. He didn't know that somewhere out in the dark, 5 humans had decided that 3,000 strangers were worth dying for. He only knew that the galaxy had abandoned them. He didn't know yet that humans weren't part of the galaxy. Not really. They were something else. Something that made decisions based on what was right instead of what was profitable. The asteroids kept falling. The clock kept counting down, and in the black between the stars, the wandering star pushed its engines toward the breaking point, racing against time and death itself.